Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrealm. I am back with another video. Thank you for returning if you've already been here, and thank you for being here if you're new. This is kind of just an impromptu video that it's been weighing heavy on me, and I think it's been weighing heavy on me because I see it constantly, and maybe not so much as other people in our community, but with everything that's been coming out in the news lately and things that I have been shared by people in my Patreon, people DMing me on Instagram, I feel like it's just, you know, time to revisit and having this conversation again, just because I want to make sure that we as a community are staying aware of what is happening in terms of book banning and book challenge. All right, so if y'all hear some weird noises in the back, my kiddo is on the couch having a lollipop. Listen, I did not feel like filming after she went to sleep tonight because I myself am pretty exhausted. So I'm here to do this video now. So there really is no script or no outline for this video in particular. I really just wanted to remind people of how wild things are getting. So there's two things that I've been kind of aware of that I wanted to share with you. One of them being that Nebraska has been introducing, I found this out in January thanks to someone in my Discord. Please remind me, I feel like it was Jennifer, but Jennifer, if I'm wrong, I know somebody in the Discord did tell me about this happening in Nebraska where they are introducing, or they've introduced a bill to their House of Representatives where a librarian could potentially do jail time for providing children with any type of sexually explicit books. And basically what this means is that they're aiming to imprison and target teachers that give children or teens any access to LGBTQIA plus books. That's what that is about. And so the fact that this is something that people even want to introduce into legislation is a red flag. It's something that we should all be actively worried about. I think that I'm a little bit more hyper aware of what is going on for the simple fact that I am a librarian. So when things like this are happening or have the potential to happen to fellow librarians, it kind of sucks. It makes me very nervous because I also live in a pretty heavily conservative state, and I do the work in terms of selection for the youth materials. So it is something that I do think about. Now, do I think that I'm in immediate danger right now? No, absolutely not. And I know that this is a process, and 9 times out of 10, it may not even happen. But the fact that this is something that's even on the table to happen is in fact a serious problem. I also, in addition to that, I have recently come across some interesting things, which is one thing that I did not know, is that Utah is now, some schools in Utah are requiring their children to bring in permission slips if they want to be able to check out any LGBTQIA plus books. I just feel like this is just getting to a point where people are more concerned about what other people and their children are doing rather than being concerned about what comes in and out of their household. We are in the middle of a culture war, and I feel like librarians and school librarians and educators are kind of being caught in a crossfire of it all because we believe in the freedom to read. We believe in accessibility, that everybody should have access to these books regardless of whether that is aligned with our personal morals and values or not. I think that one thing that makes me kind of fearful, or what makes me nervous about our community, is that I think that because we are in this bubble, and I always say this and I always circle back to this conversation because I think it is important for us to address it. I think that in our community sometimes it's easy to forget what's going on the outside because a lot of us have certain privileges and access to materials that we don't even necessarily realize all the time. I think getting books for us, and I'm not even, there are some people in our community in terms of finances where you are in the globe, access may be, you know, may be restricted, but I think here in the US, there's definitely a certain level of privilege when it comes to accessibility in terms of books. And sometimes I feel like we talk about accessibility in terms of access to a library and access to the finances necessarily to accumulate books, but we never really have this conversation about accessibility in terms of people trying to take away your ability completely to read any materials that include BIPOC individuals and individuals that may identify as LGBTQIA+. I keep having this conversation because I keep wanting to create an environment in which we are talking about these topics, because regardless of whether we think it may or may not impact us, it is in some way, shape, or form. Whether it directly impacts this community is a different thing, but outside, you know, people, if you're a library user, these things are important to be aware of. These are things that we need to be having conversations about. We saw book banning increase by tenfold in 2022. Book banning and book challenging, as I always say, is not a new phenomenon. It's not something that it's like, oh my gosh, book banning, book challenging, this is new, it's never been done before. That's not true. It's been documented for years and years and years by the American Library Association, but the increase is out of this world. This is the most book banning and challenging that we have seen as a nation in an extremely long time. And another organization, Pen America, has been keeping up with the challenges state by state, title by title. I'll make sure that I link them down in the description box below. But they are also keeping track of why these books are being banned and the different things that are happening around the country with legislation. Because see, the thing about it is it's one thing when you have a parent who's coming up to school and is like, I don't want my child reading this book. You know, you deal with that. It's another thing when you have your lawmakers getting involved and people running on platforms to promise that these things won't be accessible to kids. And as I always say when I talk about these topics, it's the kids who have access that can read these books regardless. Those parents, the parents of those kids, are the ones who are doing the banning and the challenging. It's the kids that need these books that are never going to have access to them without things like libraries that are going to be suffering the most. And I know that here in this community, we have a really, really bad habit of saying like, oh, book banning just makes people want to read the book more. It's not an honor or privilege or a badge of honor. A lot of authors will tell you it's not anything to be proud of for your book to be banned or challenged. Like, no one wants their book to be banned or challenged because that's less kids that have access to that book. There's an awesome conversation that Jason Reynolds had about book banning and challenging that I will also leave in the description box below that I really think people should check out. I want to reiterate and circle back around and say that this is not going anywhere. This is not going to die down. This is not going to change in 2023. I think along with a couple of websites, Pen America, The Guardian has done stuff on it, Book Riot has talked about it, and of course local news stations are definitely talking about it depending upon where people are located. It's going to get worse. We are just at the tip of the iceberg with book banning and book challenging, and it makes me so fearful of how many kids are going to be missing out on all this amazing literature that is coming out, that is being written so they can feel seen, so they can look into other people's experiences. Just the whole idea of that, it makes me nervous because I am a firm believer that reading has the ability to make people empathetic. And you are distorting an entire generation of people by taking away these books that are windows, mirrors, and sliding out glass doors. They can see themselves. They can see other people's experiences. They can walk in the shoes of someone that maybe they have never thought about in their life. And so to see adults who are just ramping up their goals to remove anything, it's ridiculous. And there are organized efforts to do this. This is not outside of legislation, outside of, you know, your one-off parents or group of parents who are like, oh, we want to challenge this book. It's beyond that at this point, okay? You have groups like, was it Moms for Liberty, who have designed, no lie, and I will link it because Book Riot just recently did an article about it, maybe 3 or 4 days ago. They have organized an entire pamphlet, which is over 100 pages long, where they have this rating system. It's a scale of 1 to 5. And anything that they consider, I believe, to be a 3, 4, or 5 are things that they believe should be removed. They actually have created a way for people to scan a QR code, go to the titles that are 3, 4, and 5, see exactly why the content is inappropriate, inappropriate by them, consider inappropriate by them. They take the screenshots of the material and they have it so that people can print this stuff out and go to school board meetings or county council meetings and say, we want this off of the shelves. And so people don't even have to do the research anymore. People are not actively reading these books. People are not keeping up with these books. This is not something that, you know, oh, I sat down and I read this book and I don't think that this is age appropriate. No, what is happening is that people are looking to organizations like Moms for Liberty and they are just following along with whatever they tell them to do. There are organizations, there is, I believe, a Catholic organization out there that has an actual form that you could just fill out. They've already drafted everything that you need. You just fill in the blanks of what organization you're trying to go after and how you will proceed until they get rid of the materials that you want them to get rid of. I think that for us in this community, because most of us are adults and we have this kind of open access to these materials, we don't often think about how this is going to impact the kids that are coming up now, how they're being told what they can and cannot read. And it's easy to kind of not think about that, especially if you're not a big reader of like children's lit or middle grade. It's kind of easy to kind of just like, you know, and it's not, I don't think it's intentional on anyone's part. Never that. I would never, ever say that. But I think that when you live in your own little bubble and you are, you know, really into reading, excited about reading, it's not directly impacting you. Sometimes it's kind of hard to realize what's going on. And so that's why I always constantly like to have these conversations. As redundant as they may get, I just feel like the more people that we're able to reach, the more people who have become more aware of book banning and challenging and the difference between the two and what books are being banned and challenged. And I think that's why I wanted to spend so much time this year focusing on this topic on this channel, because I want it to be a resource for people who are in the process of learning, who want to know what they can do. And I always say, like, it comes down to your local people, y'all. It's the local elections. It's showing up for your school board meetings. It's showing up to your county council meetings. It's pushing back, supporting your library, supporting your librarians, pushing back and fighting against this culture war that is doing nothing really but damaging our kids. I think that it's always funny and ironic that people don't want to help you. I say this as a single parent. Like, there was no help for me in terms of like assistance for raising my child because my gross income was too high, which you don't ever see your gross income. You see your net income. That's a whole different discussion. It's amazing that, like, you know, you want to not assist in things that really sustain the life of a child, that help a child be in a safe environment, food, clothing, safe living spaces. You don't really want to do much there. But when it comes to a book, my God, you can't help yourself. And so it just frustrates me. It irritates me. And I feel like the more that we talk about this, the more conversations that we have, the more that we are able to have an open space, an open forum for book banning and challenging, we can push back against it. And I just don't want this thing to be a one-off thing. I don't want this to be a situation where it's like, oh yeah, we talked about book banning, but like, yeah, we're done. It's over, it's done with. And it just shouldn't be like that. These two things that I've recently found out are just pure indicators of how bad it's getting. Permission slips to check out LGBTQIA plus books. Librarians possibly, through a law, facing jail time for providing quote unquote sexually explicit books. It's just ridiculous at this point. It's frightening, it's gut-wrenching, it's heartbreaking, and I just hope that eventually somewhere, somehow we'll come to our senses. But like I said, being in the middle of a culture war, it's just kind of like it's gonna last a while. So anyway, I will leave information, all the resources that I can down in the description box below. Make sure you check those out. I hope that this raises some awareness, y'all. I hope that y'all are gaining something from these conversations. I'm hoping that the Banned Book Diaries will help and really educate people about what's going on here in the US and why it's not a great thing. And I just hope that we can continue the conversation. As always, let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification. If you are looking for ways to support this channel through Patreon or through my Amazon wishlist, those links will be down in the description box as well. And as always, I'll be back with another video soon.